I'm having trouble live streaming. I don't know if this is even working or if it's just going to cut off after it works for a while. I mean, it is the middle of the day. I was not aware of any kind of like limitations to my internet service. I mean, we never had any data caps or anything like that, so I'm not sure what the problem is. So I don't know. Let's see if this is going to work. So I have some kind of life here, but it was cutting off before, though, after a few minutes. So let me just jump right into things here and hope that everything works. All right, so basically this involves my HP Omen gaming laptop and benchmarks and talking about some of the laptops that are available right now that have similar specs to what mine has. So the reason that I am even making this video is basically by chance. Micro Center sent me an email to review this laptop here because I bought it last year, about a year ago. So I went online, went to the Microsoft website, or excuse me, Micro Center website, and started writing my review. And then I kind of stopped midstream and was asking myself, well, I'm writing this review, but I don't have any data or anything to show people. So I figured since I had the means to do it, I would benchmark the laptop, take some pictures, you know, maybe post the YouTube video or whatever of this so that when people look at the reviews, they can see, you know, make a decision on this laptop. So, you know, right off the bat, I'll say that I'm very pleased with this laptop. I read some of the reviews, and as you can see here right now, this is today, 79 out of 82 reviewers. You know, so this laptop has a 4.6 out of 5. That's pretty freaking good. I would give it a 5 stars. I mean, I guess you could say 4.5, but I mean, to me, if you're going to give anything 4 stars or above, then it's a good product. So some people had some issues with a few things with it. The specs obviously are good. I mean, it's an i7-8750H, which boosts to 4 gigahertz or so. It's got a GTX 1060 discrete graphics card in it, you know, not like a shared video or anything like that. 6 gigabyte card, so that's good for a laptop. It's got 16 gigs of RAM, which is very good for a laptop, a 1 terabyte hard drive, which is decent, and a 256 SSD. So all the specs that you can see right there are very good. And at $1,000 price, I bought this for $1,000 last year. You know, $999. So as soon as I saw it, I was like, wow, that's pretty cheap. So I happened to have some money at that time, so I swiped it up. After I went to review this and backed out, I was like, well, let me look to see if HP is still selling this laptop. And it was kind of hard to find a specific model because I think this model here is specific to Micro Center because I couldn't find this model sold anywhere else. I seen like 10 GTX 1050 models. I seen GTX 1070 models, but not this specific model. I'm not saying it's not sold anywhere else, but I couldn't find this model anywhere else in my search. So Micro Center must have had like this particular build you know, made for them, as is what I'm assuming. Now I am doing this video from the laptop, as you can see. The microphone is from the laptop, so I did make some adjustments to the microphone. I had to turn down, you know, I had to turn it down a little bit because it was picking up my voice very easily. So, and as you can probably hear the traffic outside too, so I hope it's not too loud and overbearing. So the mic is very sensitive. Let's see what else here. So what I'm going to do here is just show you some of the benchmarks I did on this laptop. You know, we'll go over some of the issues that people had with them, and then I'll give you my assessment about those issues after we go through the benchmarks. And then I'm going to show you some laptops that are for sale now and give you my opinion on them based on me buying this laptop. Okay? So let's get started. Okay? And by the way, this is one of the cheapest laptops, gaming laptops you can get with these kinds of specs. I'm not saying it's the only one, but it's definitely the only one I could find for $999 with these particular specs. Most of the time, you know, they gimp out on the RAM. They give you 8 gig stick instead of 16, or they give you a GTX 1050 or a 1050 Ti rather than a 1060. Or they might just give you an SSD drive and that's it, you know. I've seen some laptops that just had a 512 gigabyte SSD and no hard drive in it, so that's like messed up. Or they give you like an i5 processor rather than the i7 processor. So you know, so you can kind of see the specs here. I'll show you them before I get into the benchmarks. It's kind of small. So it's a 8750H. You know, they have it running at 2.2 gigahertz. Obviously, it's going to be running that way until you play a game or something. But it boosts up to 4.1 gigahertz. 16 gigs of RAM, as we already saw, DDR4 at 2666, which is good. You know, it's great for a laptop. The SSD is an NVMe M.2 drive, so that's great. And then it's got the 1 terabyte hard drive. The screen is 15.6 inches, and it's full HD IPS monitor, LED with backlighting, so it has good you know, brightness to it. And it's, I believe, 16:9 resolution ratio. I don't know if it has it here. And then it's got the video card as a GTX 1060, 6 gigabyte card. So that was a plus. The LAN has 10, 100, 1000, so that's pretty decent. It's got the dual band wireless, which is cool. It's got Bluetooth built in. It's got 3 times USB 3.1 slots, and it has a Thunderbolt 3 slot. It has an HDMI port and a mini display port. It's got an audio jack, I think, somewhere. Yeah, it's got a headphone jack, and I believe it's got I can't see, a microphone jack as well. So you can also use other peripherals with this rather than just what's built in. The camera, I think, is only 720p, unfortunately. That was one of the things that, you know, I was like, wish it was a 1080p camera, but what are you going to do? For $999, you can't ask for everything. But it is capable of 720 at 60 frames per second, so that's a good thing. So hopefully this live stream will stay. Okay, so that's it. Model number 15DC0051NR, you know, 15.6 inches. Now, the one thing I can say about the screen is well, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but I believe it's got a high pixel density, because the pixels are very tiny, you know? So, you know, it's got very good picture quality, when you're looking at anything, a game or even a whatever, an HD or 4K picture. At least to me, the quality of the screen is fantastic, you know, for this price range. So I haven't had any issues with, like, you know, it being annoying when I'm looking at a game or something like that. You know, of course, people might nitpick about, I don't know, contrast ratios and all the darks and the versus the lights. It was fine to me, so I don't know. Like I said, I'm just a normal guy. You know, I'm not going to sit here and like say the screen has to be this particular contrast ratio to be good, or it's got to have this brightness nit to be good. You know, it's got to have this color range specifically to be good. You know, it's like, for me, I look at a range, you know. If it's not too dark when I'm looking at it, then it's good. If it's not like crazily too bright or the contrast is blinding me, then it's good. You know, if when I'm looking at it, everything looks good, then it's good. You know, I don't really need to look at the individual specs. It's like somebody who was telling me that in my video I didn't set my settings correctly because a Power Color RX 590 Red Devil that I bought got so hot that when I touched it, it burnt me. So that was my fault because I had my settings wrong. I didn't overclock the card. I was using the card in its proper resolution range. It's a 1080p card, but I was also doing 1440 on it. But the card got hot and it failed. It was throwing up artifacts even at 1080p. So on ultra settings. So to me, that's not my fault. I mean, I've been building my own computers for like decades. So I'm not stupid when it comes to video cards, but I don't need to like look at the GPU temperatures, the clock speeds, the boost speeds, the voltages, and all that other crap. You know, if I go to a store and buy a video card, then I expect it to work out of the box. I shouldn't have to undervolt it, overvolt it, overclock it, underclock it, change voltages. You know, I shouldn't have to do any of that. I should just throw it in my desktop, and if it's rated to play 1080p gaming, then I expect it to play at ultra. You know, if it's a 1080p card, you know, the AMD has to make their cards cool, quiet, and working out of the box. I shouldn't have to go to Wattman or you know, Waterman or Airman or Voltage Man, or, you know what I'm saying? I'm just being funny, but I shouldn't have to use any other applications to get the card to work properly, you know? So that's why I like this laptop, because it works. I don't have to play around with it. I don't have to change settings in it. It just works, you know? Now, it does have the HP software on here, which I think I have up somewhere. Let me see where it is. Okay, it does have this software with it, okay? Now, you know, you can't uninstall it, but you don't have to use it. And it really, to me, hasn't affected my computer at all. I just make sure I update it, because obviously you don't want something that's not updated because hackers can get in there. So I always update it. And, you know, every once in a while I do a performance tune-up check. I mean, I don't need to do that, but I just want to see what it can do. You know, if it's on here, then it's on here. So I have my printers. You can set up your printers here, see? I happen to have an HP printer in the house, so that worked out perfectly for this. Yeah, so I mean, it's not, oops, I shouldn't have that on there. You're not supposed to see my serial number. Anyway, so Yeah. So I mean, there's no problem with this, you know. So I was supposed to have the specs up here, and I don't know how I got off of that. So, oh, whatever. Yeah. So I didn't want to show you my serial numbers, but I ended up doing it anyway. I was supposed to show you this. I don't know how they got back to the other thing. So anyway, this is stuff you already just seen. So it's showing here a little bit extra. It's showing you the system board. The memory is running at 2,667 megahertz. Graphics GTX 1060, current resolution 1080, the refresh rate of the monitor 60 hertz. Now some people might have a problem with that, but I don't competitively game, and even if I did, I wouldn't care. You know, 60 hertz on this little dinky 1080p it's plenty. Yeah, so that's pretty much it here, I guess. There's really not much to say here. Realtek audio. Yeah. So I ended up overclocking this, though. I didn't have it overclocked before, and I didn't have it overclocked when I did the benchmarks. So just take note of that. So right now I'm just using this Asus Tweak. You know, everybody likes to use the Afterburner, but I don't know. I don't like it too much. I don't need to be like playing around with all the individual settings. Like I said, I want something to work out of the box. And if I overclock it, I just want to do this. Throw some sliders up. But as you can see, it's running right now. I don't know if I can show you. I can show you the temperatures in a second. I have it overclocked plus 60 and 200 on the memory. Now, I was playing around with this before, and I went way above this. Like, you can overclock the crap out of this card on this laptop. But I don't recommend it for keeping it long term. If you just want to kind of like play around with it and do some quick benchmarks, you know, I had this thing running, I don't know what it was. I don't remember. It was like plus 500 or more, plus 600 on the memory, and I think plus 200 almost on the GPU. So, I mean, I don't recommend doing it just simply because it's a laptop. It's going to get hot, you know, and it doesn't have the cooling solution that a desktop has. So again, if you just want to see how far you can push it just for fun, you can do it. So I don't know if this is showing the temperature here on this. Yeah, I have to get up the other ones. Let me see here. So I'll show you the CPU. Let me just get out of this real quick. I'll show you see the CPU ID. So I have this thing. I don't know if I went into the BIOS or not to change this. But as you can see, just sitting here idle, I have it running at, you know, 3,800, you know, 3.8 gigahertz, almost 3.9 gigahertz. So I think I went into the BIOS and did something so that it runs at a higher clock speed all the time. But I don't quote me on that because I don't remember if that's what I did. But, you know, pleasingly enough, it's running at 3.9 gigahertz all the time, and that's what I'd rather have. Let me see if I can get up this other stuff here. I downloaded some, where is it? I don't know what happened to it. Let me see. Where did it go? I had the GPU-Z on here, I thought. I mean, I know I did. what the heck did I do with it now? Crap. Sorry about that. I usually make shortcuts too. I mean, I got the Intel Extreme Utility thing here, but that's really not going to do anything. That's kind of worthless for a laptop. It's not even starting up. I don't think it'll start up on this laptop because of the HP software. I don't know what happened to the GPU-Z. I had it on here. Do I have to sign for it? No. Okay, you can leave it on the porch. Thank you very much. Oh, there it is. It's probably the first time I started it up. Okay, here we go. Oh, no. There it is. I can't see because of the stuff on the screen. Okay, so right now you can see. Okay, so here's the temperature of the. Well, I wanted to give you the temperature of the GPU. So you can see the temperature here. I guess this is the temperature that's. I guess that's an average temperature, I suppose. So you can see that it's running like in the upper 50s, low 60s idle. Now, when I can tell you when it boosts, that temperature shoots way up. But what it's doing is going core by core. You know what I'm saying? That's what the boost does. It'll boost the processor to, you know, like say 90 degrees, and even in some cases above that, but only for like so many seconds, and then it'll go to the next core. So, you know, a lot of people were getting worried because the cores were boosting to high temperatures, but that's what it's supposed to do. So, you know, you don't have to really get worried about that. I mean, if you can see here, look at the TDP, 20 watts. I mean, look at that. That's insane. So, I mean, that's really, really low wattage. So I don't know if, let's see here, advanced tuning. Okay, here we go. So I have this up now. So, you know, you could do a stress test, right? And I don't really want to do it while I'm streaming. I don't know if that's a good idea because I don't want to kill the stream. I mean, you could probably do a benchmark maybe. I don't know. It's not giving me the option. Why? Oh, here we go. No, I don't think I want to do that, do I? Let's try this. So you can see that it's throttling, okay? Wonder if I can get it. I can probably show. I have to put on a different window here to show you the core speeds in real time. So you can see the temperature. See, the average is 80 degrees now. Obviously, the longer the benchmark goes, the higher the temperature is going to be. Now it's doing power limit throttling. See, it's up to 45 watts, so it's knocking that down now. But I mean, you could see here though that it's not really clocking down too far. I mean, it's still above 3 gigahertz. You know, 3.3 gigahertz. I mean, I mean, that's not bad. You really for a laptop. I mean, I've seen laptops that went down into the like 2.5 gigahertz. You know, I mean, that's really low. Now, again, you know, the longer you do this, the warmer it's going to get, and, you know, those numbers might go down, you know, depending on how many cores it's using. It's going down a little bit more now. 2.99 there, you saw. That's the cache frequency, though. But I mean, over here you can see, you know, it's still running at like 3.2, 3.3, 3.4. That's pretty darn good, man. At least for me. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. So, you know, again, I'm live streaming, recording, so I don't know if that affects the score. But actually, 86 degrees is not bad. My 9900K, when I do these benchmarks, the highest temperature's gone up to like 92 degrees. So, you know, not too shabby, man. Now, I wasn't going to do all this for you, but why not? You can see it in action a little bit. But again, this probably would be higher if I wasn't live streaming and all that junk. I would imagine. So, yeah. So I don't know. I forgot how to do the... So this is just the monitor. I forgot how to get the individual cores showing up here. I don't know. Anyway, I think that's good enough for that. I mean, it's pretty good. It doesn't really get outrageously warm on the CPU. I mean, when you're gaming, like I said, you'll get a steady high temperature, but you don't have to worry about that because it's gonna adjust the cores accordingly. So you don't really have anything to worry about. So let me get out of that. I'm still wondering why I didn't, what I did with the GPU-Z. I definitely downloaded that. I don't think this is going to really help at all, this thing. It might show a temperature, though, so you can kind of see. Let me see here. Sorry, my nose is running. I'm going to get into the benchmarks very soon. I don't know why it asks me every single time. That's Windows for you. All right, so I don't know if it's showing the temperature here. Yeah, I guess it is. I don't know if I can make it bigger. Oh boy. There we go. Let's see if I can make this a little bigger. Yeah, there we go. All right, so it's a little bigger now. Okay, so you can see the temperature of the 1060 is at 51 degrees Celsius. And right now it's downclocked to 747 megahertz. And it's at 54% utilization. And that's streaming, so that's not too bad. I mean, that's pretty good. And the processor, you can see, is running here, 12 threads. And you can see it's changing, you know, it's using different cores, you know, and adjusting the temperatures, or, you know, keeping the temperature at a steady, you know, between upper 50s, lower 60s. So it's, you know, pretty good, you know, pretty good. I mean, I'm happy with it, you know. All right, so let's, what do I got here now? So this is a monitor info app that I got downloaded, but it really doesn't work with this screen, unfortunately, because it's not really giving you the data, like the monitor name. It's not giving you. It's not giving you the refresh rates. It's digital, you know. The display gamma is 2.2. So it's not really like worth anything for this particular function, you know, at least this laptop monitor. So I'm just going to get rid of that. But there is this UFO, testufo.com, you know, you can do different monitor tests. And this is the reported refresh rate, 60 hertz. I didn't change it, so, you know, just to show that it is a 60 hertz monitor. You can do like tests with this thing, testufo.com. Now, if you move the mouse, it'll make this thing say stutter. But again, we are live streaming, so you're going to have some. It's going to affect it, of course, you know, because I'm live streaming and recording. So, you know, this is a Vsync test. So it's showing you that it's going from 60 to 30, 60 to 30. You can put it on 1080p, you know, and it drops it down to 30. Shows that for a couple seconds, then it drops it up to 60. I mean, I don't really exactly know what it's trying to do here, but you have to read all the details here. Yeah, so I mean, there's really nothing else to show, really. Pixels per second, so this would be 4K, 1440, and 60 frames per second, or 1080p. So I guess that's what it means, I guess. I'm not sure exactly. Because it doesn't give you, well, 1920 right here. So 32 pixels per frame. So I mean, the 60 frames per second smooth. So I guess that's at your native resolution. So that's just something you can play around with. www.testufo.com. All right, well, anyway, so you saw this. You can see the memory. It's running at 1330. You multiply that by 2. DDR4. So let me just get into the benchmarks now. And maybe go into what I experienced with the benchmarks. Now, I was debating on whether to do them live or not. So here's what the laptop looks like, because I can't really show you a picture of it. So that's the keyboard layout. Now, I have used this now for a year, so it isn't looking exactly in perfect shape, but it's got the nice, GeForce here, Core i7, 8th generation. It is a 6-core, 12-thread processor. Pretty Good. It's got the Bang & Olufsen sound in it. That's what it kind of looks like on my table back there. It's a nice little laptop. It has the RGB lighting on the keypads if you want to play in the dark. You can set it however you want it so that you can see your keys. That's what it looks like in the dark with my crappy camera. Nice. That's the back. Ignore the scuffs there. That's just, I always like stick my keyboard on top, and it's just scuff. That can be buffered out. But I'm just showing you basically the look. And it's real nice too. It has this, this is not flat here. This is like kind of raised up here. So this is actually like a nice, embossed, I guess that's what you call it. And that's the bottom. Again, same deal, nice design. And here's your two fans here, one here, one here. And I do have, you can tell there's a little bit of dust there. I'm gonna have to clean this out. I should have showed you the back. Like here you can see the back. See the holes back here? That's where the air gets thrown out, at a pretty good pace. It's pretty effective, And then there's the box. And there's the screen. So that's like the laptop actually showing a picture of Hitman. That's actually the game running. So, even looking here, you can't see any pixels. You know what I'm saying? It's a very good picture. Like the picture looks that good, if not better. I don't know what it's going to look like on YouTube. So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty nice, pretty nice. If it looks as clear as it looks to me on YouTube. Yeah, so that's that. I don't know why I did this again. Oh, that's it, yeah, duh. So let me back up here. I can't see behind my head. So what I'll do is I'll show you, we kind of already showed you some of this. So this is how I normally play, use my laptop with just the basic overclock. It's running at 1753 megahertz. And usually runs about 51 degrees, 50 degrees just idle. And then here I do have the GPU-Z, which I don't know why I can't find it. I got my contacts in, and it's very hard for me to read sometimes, so I miss stuff easily. But I think at this setting here, you can see these specs here. Texture fill rate 140 gigatextiles per second. Bandwidth 192.7 gigabits per second. Most of you guys looking at this probably know this. The memory is running at 2007 megahertz. Boost is 1753. And again, I told you can jack this stuff up a lot. I believe I got this bandwidth up to 220 gigabits per second. So that was a lot. That's quite a bump. I mean, that's getting up to, well, that's probably getting up to like the 1660 Ti or the RTX 2060. 220 gigabits per second. Here the temperature, it's just showing the temperature here. You can see it's a GTX 1060. So I'm just kind of verifying the temperatures here. Yeah, so that's all you need to see there. So let's jump into the benchmarks. So the benchmarks that I picked were basically games that you would probably play on a laptop. Okay. I didn't do any competitive gaming because I don't competitive game, but I can tell you this. Probably most of the competitive games are going to run very smoothly on this. I mean, the specs on this machine are just great. So if you put Vsync on, you don't have to, but if you put Vsync on, you're probably going to get a solid 60 frames per second in every game you play, practically, you know. Especially competitive, you're definitely going to get 60 frames per second. I don't see why you wouldn't. A GTX 1060 is more than capable of handling all the competitive games that I'm aware of. PUBG, Fortnite, Apex Legends, you know, whatever. So let's start with the synthetic benchmarks first. All right, so I just basically did like Firestrike, Skydiver, Time Spy, Cinebench. Here's a Cinebench score. This is with the new release, Cinebench release 20. So these numbers here, I think, changed a little bit. I don't think they equate to the 15, Cinebench 15. So this 2000 might seem like a high number, but I don't think it's high anymore. I think they changed it. But let's see. Down here you could see 6-core, 12-thread, 2.2 base clock. I got a score of 395. Okay. And a Ryzen Threadripper scored a 400. And a 7700K scored a 476. But of course that's going to clock up much higher. And then here a Ryzen 7 1700X 8-core only scored a 378. So, or I guess this is the reference numbers or whatever. So it's doing good, you know, very good. That's a single core. I don't think I took a screenshot of the multi-core. I apologize for that. Yeah, so I didn't take the I didn't take a picture of the multi-core, so I apologize for that. But again, are you going to compare a laptop to a 1700X anyway? I mean, I'm pretty sure that you can do video editing on this machine. I mean, I don't even have to like look up on YouTube. You definitely can do video editing with this machine. Now, is it gonna do it very, very fast? Probably not, because it's gonna, you know, throttle down, so things are gonna be a little slower. But you can see the score here anyway, so you can look it up yourself. It scored a 2131 on the Cinebench 20, so, you know, you can look that up. All right, so I also did some Furmark tests, and I apologize for the camera being in the way here. You know, I don't really know how to evaluate this, to be honest with you, except at 1080p, Furmark reported 63 frames per second average. So with a 3809 score. So I guess that's okay. The GPU temperature got up to 77 degrees, and GPU load was at 98%. The test ran for 1 minute and 33 seconds. So if that means anything to you, then there you go. I ran it again and got 62 frames per second, 79 degrees. you know, 97% GPU load. So again, whatever that means to you. So let's go through these benchmarks here. All right, so Firestrike, it got a 9800. And I apologize again, crapola. I think this is a 1440p test. I could be wrong about that. But anyway, graphics test 1 you can see down here, and I'll zoom in. So test 1 got 51 frames per second, test 2 44 frames per second. I don't know what physical test is, 48 frames per second. What's the GPU score here? Graphics score is 10,907. I probably should have gave you some more statistics here. So again, I apologize. But the overall score was 9,800. The graphics score is 10,000. And again, I believe this is a 1440p test, Firestrike. But correct me if I'm wrong. So Skydiver, which I'm pretty sure is a 1080p test. Okay, I could be wrong. Got a graphics score of 34,537. A combined score with the processor, 26,244. You know, graphics test 1, 155 frames per second. Graphics test 2, 160 frames per second. So, you know, definitely performing well at the 1080p. And got a pretty decent score for a laptop. I mean, again, remember, this is a laptop, and this is a test that runs for a longer period of time. So you're going to have some throttling, you know, some adjustments the computer's going to be making. But, you know, not too bad. Time Spy, which is a, hold on, yeah. So I believe this is another 1440p test. Again, I just feel very stupid right now. You know, the reason why I didn't really test this laptop for this long is because I have some medical issues. I have migraines that I have to deal with, and it kind of wreaks havoc on my memory, as well as my moods and stuff like that. So whenever I get a migraine, I'm kind of laid up, you know, until my medicine kicks in, and then I come out of it, and then I'm kind of in a daze for a while, and I have some memory recall problems. So yeah, so but I believe this is another 1440p test, or maybe even 4K test, because the graphics test score was 24 frames per second. So I think this could be a 4K test, by the looks of it. So again, Time Spy 3,934. Cinebench. So I did a Nova bench score here. I got a 2490. It says that my GPU score, I'm in the 35th percentile, which isn't, you know, super wonderful, but it's not bad either. It's kind of like in the middle. So again, for a gaming laptop at a $1,000 price point, I think that's pretty good. GPU score was 769. It got 109 frames per second, which I'm assuming is at 1080p. Not sure, it could be 720p actually. OpenCL was 4,509 gigaflops. So, you know, I guess the score is kind of mediocre. Again, I ran it again, got a 769, or I might have just taken a screenshot of this. But the overall score was 2490, so you can see here I did it 3 times. They're all about the same. Pass mark rating was 5,247. The graphics, what came out to be, the 3D graphics score was 9,796, and that made the 93rd percentile as far as pass mark is concerned, so that's pretty good, you know. That's not bad at all. That's above average. Overall, the computer got a 93%, so that's a pretty good score, which means this system is better than a lot of systems out there. So I also did the PC Mark 10 extended. Let me do this manually here. So this just basically tests everything. You know, it does web score, photo score, spreadsheet, content creation, you know, apps, video score, essentials, gaming, blah, 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 the whole 9 yards. So I got a 5,566. So if you wanted to use this laptop for everything and anything, you want to do the PC Mark 10 extended. And it came out to be 45%, better than 45% of all the results out there. So that's pretty good, you know. And as you can see down here, gaming laptop, the score is 5,454, and this one was above it. So not bad, right? Pretty good. And here the video score came out to be 4,991. I'm not totally sure, though, how that equates to good or bad. You know, these synthetic benchmarks, it's like, well, what does that tell me when I get my game? You know, nothing really. Okay, so that's all the synthetics. So for the most part, the synthetics to me show that it's average to above average when it comes to performance. So that's pretty good for a $1,000 machine. And I don't even know if you can really go by these things. You know, as you'll see when I show you the gaming benchmarks. So we'll start out here with Far Cry New Dawn. You know, that's going to be a more intensive game for this kind of a system. So I don't know what kind of screenshots I took here. But I had my FPS counter running because I figured it's, at least you can see the GPU temperatures. You can also see like how much RAM it's using and all that other good stuff. So this is the settings that I used. I guess that's what this one is. So I was running the game at 1080p because this card, you know, really is a 1080p card. You can do 1440 as well. I've done it with my 1060 before. But I'm trying to be more realistic here. So I just kind of ran everything at 1080p. If you guys want me to do 1440p, and if you also want me to do some live, like real time, like real video editing to see like how long it takes me to do certain things, I'll be happy to do that. Everything was ran, you know, at DirectX 11 or 12. So here, everything was on high settings. So this is what I'm showing you here. I didn't really think it was necessary to put everything on ultra because I think that's just kind of like overkill for a laptop, simply because you only have a 15.6-inch screen, right? So there come, at least in my experience and my observations, okay, because sometimes you don't need apps to tell you things, right? You just do it from experience. On a 15.6-inch screen, you're not going to really notice a difference between ultra and high unless there's some kind of strange tweak, like a particular kind of shadowing or the hair, you know, the real-time flappy hair, you know, that you'll notice, obviously. And maybe just certain kinds of shadowing, right, that is only the kind of shadowing that's going to stand out, you know, but on high settings, everything looks fantastic on the screen. So I don't really think you're going to notice a whole lot of difference between ultra and high while you're playing the game. Yes, if you're sitting there taking a screenshot, you know, you might say, oh, look at that, or oh, look at this, or oh, look at that. But while you're playing the game, you're not really going to notice a difference. And I don't think you'll notice a difference anyway. But, you know, ultra is just like putting stuff in there that doesn't really need to be in there, in my personal opinion. But that's just me. Again, if you want me to test it on ultra, fine. Let me know. So anyway, it's all on high, though. That's pretty good settings, you know. And I even have the HD textures on, you know. And that takes up an extra, like, a lot of gigabytes of space. I don't understand that, to be honest with you. And I don't even know why they have to make HD textures. Don't they make the game with HD textures? I don't know. And, you know, I just put this in here. Resolution scale's on 1. Field of view is at 90 because that's usually where I like it to be. Vsync is off. All right, so here's the results. I'm going to try to... Okay, so at 1080p at high settings, the average frames per second was 64. So that's pretty good. Minimum was 45, maximum was 82. So, and I tried to take the screenshot as quickly as possible here so that you can kind of compare the two. So just sitting here looking at the screen with the, because the background image is actually dynamic, it's live, it's moving, it's not just a picture. So it was at 61 frames per second, and the average was 62, so it kind of matches this. I just figured you can compare these two. And you can see that CPU, you know, it's up there in the 70s, you know, and low 80s. But again, on here it looks terrible, but you know, these temperatures are going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. So there's really nothing to worry about. And you can see that it's running at a constant 3800 megahertz. So that's perfect for this kind of a game, you know. And the GPU RAM is 4.7, temperatures at 73. Now these numbers will go down after I take the screenshot. So again, as soon as this popped up, I took a screenshot. So all these temperatures are at their highest. So from just sitting here, these are going to go down. This is going to go down. But I just wanted you to kind of get a live view from a screenshot right after this thing popped up so that, you know, it's as close as possible to when the benchmark was running. Yeah, so... And then I don't know if I did it a second time or not. No. I mean, it might have been. But I think that's just the second snap I did. Let's see here. Yeah, so you can see here, you know, the temperature's already dropping on all these. So I don't think, yeah, this is the same picture. So yeah, so you can actually see there. Because for some reason I took several screenshots. So you can see the temperature's already dropping after just 3 screenshots. You know, quick screenshots. Now this is while the game was running, okay? And again, you could see here that at certain points, like here, 94 degrees on this core, okay? You know, again, some are in the 70s, some are in the 80s. The VRAM that's being used is 5 gigahertz, so it's utilizing the 6 gigs on the card. The card is running pretty steadily at 75 degrees, so that's not really an issue for me. Even if it was running at 80 or even 82 degrees, that wouldn't really be an issue for me, because the GTX 10 series cards, you can run them at 88 degrees and they'll still be fine. You know, I mean, most of them didn't get up that high, so it didn't, you know, I'm just saying. But I was just taking some screenshots so you saw the frames per second during certain scenes. And I hope I'm not being too loud in the video here, because this mic really picks up my voice. So we're using the system RAM 7.5, so it's quite a bit. So during this scene, it was at 70 frames per second. Oh, yeah. So this is probably another run I did here. So 65 frames per second here. And it matches 63 frames per second average. So you can see the temperature was up to 90 degrees. So the highest it got here was 94. I think that's the highest it's going to get. I don't think it's going to go any higher than that. But again, you don't have to worry about that, because they're only running at that temperature for very short periods of time. So, and all the cores are not going to be 94 degrees, trust me. As you can see here. That's just how the processors work nowadays. That's how they boost. Okay, so that's kind of normal. And on a laptop, it's definitely going to be that way, you know, because it's trying to get the most out of them, you know, but keeping them safe. So don't worry about it. Yeah, so anyway, 65 frames per second on high settings at 1080p. Good. So I'm going to move on to the next game. That's Far Cry New Dawn. So it's good. It's getting good frame rates at 1080p. Just what you want. Now I'm going to go through the hard game, the really graphically intensive games first. Okay? So I'll do Metro, and I did do Metro, believe it or not. I did it. Okay, so on this one I went and put the average frames per second. So again, 1080p, high quality, Vsync off, 65 frames per second average. Okay, and I even put the date there. What's today's date? The 29th. So this is when I did the benchmarks here. Pretty much that week, you know, but so, you know, just last week. So it wasn't that long ago. And it was on the previous drivers from NVIDIA. Okay, not the drivers that were just released. Well, on here somewhere it might show the driver. I'll look at it later. But it wasn't the one that's there today on the 29th. It was the one before that. So I wanted to try to do them all under the same driver. But again, Metro Exodus, brand new title, great graphical game, 65 frames per second at high settings. And you can see here, that's DirectX 12 too. I did turn the Hairworks off just because I don't really see, I mean, I don't know, I guess the monsters maybe. You know, you can turn it on if you want. I don't think it's going to really make a big hit. I have on advanced physics, tessellation. I even put the texture filtering up to 16 times, which I don't think really matters nowadays, because most cards can handle 16 times texture filtering without even taking a performance hit, because the cards are just made to do that now. So yeah, so high settings, DirectX 12, tessellation on, high quality. Pretty impressive to me. So this one, basically what I did was I took a bunch of screenshots so I could show you the scenes. So in the cave scene, I had to start from the beginning because Metro Exodus doesn't have global saving, you know, cloud saving, so I had to restart the game and start a campaign over again. Which actually probably was okay because I was able to go into different scenes. So in the cave scene, I was getting, you know, average of 67 frames per second. You can see here I'm at 70 frames per second. You can see here that the CPU is running at maximum here at 90 degrees, you know, 80s, low 80s to 90. But again, that's all changing constantly, so you don't have to worry about it burning up. The GPU is running at 96%. That's running at 80 degrees, so it's a little bit working here for Metro. Only using 2.9 gigs of VRAM. That's what was kind of surprising to me. 6.2 on the memory. The DirectX 12, as you can see here, 1920 by 1080. I wouldn't really worry about these 1% lows and highs here, the 1% low and the 0.1% low, because this is not a full version of FPS monitor. So I don't think this is going to be accurate. Because every time you change it, change scenes, that's going to change. So again, I'm moving through. On this scene, I'm at 61 frames per second. See, the average is not really accurate here too, because, you know, that's why I took the screenshots here, because I'm moving along. So this is going to change constantly. This is accurate here. I'm at 61 frames per second. The video card's at 80 degrees. This might be boring to you, but some people were complaining about temperatures. So I'm kind of giving you proof here that, you know, yes, you are getting some temperatures, but I'm testifying that you don't have to worry about it. You know what I'm saying? Because again, these are constantly changing. And I can prove it to you. I'll start up the game if you know, and if you guys want me to show some live gameplay, I will. Again, 63 frames per second. GPU is running at 97%, 80 degrees. See, it's a constant 80 degrees, so at least for now, it's running at a steady 80, and that's okay. 80 degrees is fine for the 10 series cards. Now here I got 81 frames per second. Again, CPU is running pretty much the same. It's not really changing. The maximum here is 90 degrees, and the CPU is running, you could say, at an average of at least 3,700 megahertz. That's pretty darn good. You know, so you're not going to be worrying about, like, you know, enough processing power. You definitely got it there. 83 frames per second there. That's kind of not a great screenshot there. Now this is kind of like I guess you could say a cinematic scene where I was out of control of it, but it still was using the game engine. So this isn't just like a movie. You know, Metro Exodus, they use the game engine to do these things. So again, 83 frames per second. GPU is still holding at a steady 80 degrees. And the CPU temperatures have dropped a little bit. This is again the same kind of a cinematic scene using the engine. You got some flame, you know, you got some fire in the background here. So that's kind of working the card a little bit more too, working the processors a little bit. Because you got the you know, all the effects going on here. So the temperature of the card went up a little bit to 81. CPUs here, a couple cores went up to 91. But again, don't worry about it. because as you can see here, it's dropping the voltage down to 1.17, so that's going to save them. You know, as you can see here, the lower the temperatures, the higher the voltage. So, you know, the voltage is kind of, you know, the voltage goes up, it ramps up these speeds, and then it drops it. And that will drop them down. So here's another kind of a cinematic scene. 71 frames per second. The card's, again, holding at a steady 81 right now. CPU's still the same. No problems there. Again, similar 73 frames per second. 88 frames per second. Now the GPU is going up a little bit here to 82. The CPU is going up a bit more here on some cores for some reason. You know, of course, the game is running now for a while. I've been running it now, I don't know how many minutes, probably 15, 20 minutes. So GPU's going up, but again, that's not dangerous temperatures. You know, 82 is not anything to worry about on the GTX cards. Even the CPU, though, is still not a problem because it's fluctuating. Now here in this scene with all these people and everything going on, I expected the frame rates to drop because the same thing happens when you're on the train. Now somebody from, shoot, what's that website called? It left me now. But there was a YouTube channel that explained why the frame rates take a dump in these kinds of scenes. Like in the train, when you're sitting up, when you're on the train talking, you know, everybody's just sitting on the train and they're talking, or this scene here. There's a particular reason why that happens. And I forgot the reason, so forgive me for that. But this, again, this is not during the gameplay. This is just during the cinematic cutscene. So, you know, it goes right back up once you get into the game, as you can see here. I'm right back up to 60 frames per second. And again, this is unusual. It doesn't usually drop down to 36 frames per second. This is just like one of the worst ones, I guess you can say. The worst case scenario. But again, this is not gameplay. This is just during a cutscene. So again, here it's running at 3800 megahertz. CPU, again, running fine. 80s, 90s, 80s, low 90s, and this core here is at 95 for some particular reason. This one, like, ramped up. The GPU is at 81 degrees. This is kind of like a cinematic because you don't have control of the character when they go through there, so sometimes it takes a little bit of a drop for some reason. Again, this is one of those scenes indoor, like being on the train, where for some reason, which again is on YouTube channel, and I can't think of the channel that explained it, it'll take a little bit of a frame drop, but that's only during this particular situation. You know, once you move out and get into the open, you're fine again. So, you know, but it was still playable. I didn't have a problem playing. 45 frames per second is still well playable. It wasn't like choppy or anything like that. It was still running smoothly. But again, as soon as I get out of there and look out the window, it bumps up to 66 frames per second. Out here, I can't see that number. 50 frames per second looking out that way. Because, you know, you got a lot of snow going on, debris flying around, the fog, you know. So when I was looking that way, it went down to 50 frames per second. The CPU seemed to be doing a little bit of more work there. But again, within reason, everything's within normal specs, okay? They can run that way. Hey, I would rather things run a little hotter within spec than throttle down to the point where you can't even play the game. So what do you want? You want the processor to boost to your advantage, or do you want it to throttle down to your disadvantage? I think I would rather it throttle up, you know what I'm saying, and keep the lows high and boost up to the higher, rather than it going down. And then that's when you get a lot of like problems with like choppiness and stuff like that. So in this scene, there's a lot of snow going on, GPU's at 82 degrees. The frames went down to 40 at this particular spot, Again, these are the worst case scenarios, so I don't think it's really anything to worry about, There's a lot of snow, there's a lot of like debris again. My face has got water spots all over it, and so there's a lot happening in this particular scene. But again, it's at 53 frames per second here. Not bad. And we're talking about Metro Exodus, one of the newest games out there that have some of the best looking graphics in it. So, this thing here is what eludes me. only 2.9 gigabytes of VRAM being used. That's why I'm kind of like curious about that. It's using 6.5 gigs of memory system RAM. So I'm thinking this game uses the CPUs quite a lot, as you can see here. I mean, it is literally utilizing all 12 threads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely utilizing all the cores. So I'm thinking that the CPU is taking over some of the physics. Maybe that's what it is. When you enable physics in the game, maybe that dumps them off to the CPU. I have to experiment about that a little bit. I'm going to take it off the physics and see if like the VRAM jumps up on the GPU. So actually you could save your CPU some work maybe. I have to look at that. I wish whoever's watching this later was on now so they can tell me what they want me to do. So again, why am I going through all this? Why not just throw up a bunch of graphs? I don't know. I like to see proof. I mean, Gamers Nexus and Linus and all those guys. Well, I like Linus because he does show you a lot of things live, but Gamers Nexus, love him. I don't always agree with him, but love what he does. But I don't really need to see graphs. I don't care. They don't do anything for me. I want to see some, meat. I want show me because I can do all, I can make graphs myself at home. I'm just showing you for sure that you can run Metro Exodus at a good frame rate without it being choppy. Now the choppiness, you have to take my word for it. I didn't experience any kind of crazy lag or anything like that in the game, at least from what I noticed. Again, here, 61 frames. The card's still holding around 81 degrees. And, the CPU by now, you really don't have to worry about that. That's pretty much staying the same, too. Now, if one of these cores went up to like 100 degrees, then I would probably be concerned. Then I would probably say you have to turn the graphics settings down for the game. So yeah, but this is a very graphically intensive game, and I'm surprised that it's running it at high settings. So again here, 50 frames per second. I mean, it's hard for you guys to see. I mean, I'm assuming you can see it. I mean, I guess I should just like do that because that'll make it a little bigger. In here, I'm at 86 frames per second. The CPU isn't doing as much work. In here, I'm at 91 frames per second. CPU's doing a little bit more, but still nothing outrageous. I mean, it's still holding steady between 3700 and 3800 megahertz, so you're not getting any kind of like frequency drop, you know? Everything's holding steady, and that's good. 95 frames per second here. 56 frames per second here, of course, because you got a lot of, you know, lighting going on and fogginess and real-time shadowing going on. Here we're at 75 frames per second. You know, a couple of the CPU cores went up to 94. But again, that's only for very brief periods. I wouldn't worry about it. And you know, it's going up to 1.3, which is still within safe voltage. You know, most people say don't go above like 1.4. I mean, 1.35 ideally. You can go all the way up to 1.4, but it's not recommended. Now here is an outdoor area where there's a lot going on. You know, there's a lot of like stuff happening outside, you know, with the weather. So I'm getting 48 frames per second here. CPU's working a little bit here, but still within, it's pretty consistent, so I'm not worried about it. By the train here inside, 66 frames per second. You know, so for the most part, I mean, the game is running at desired frame rates. Here's 90 frames per second in this particular location. And, you know, you can see I'm not cherry picking. I'm showing you the good parts, the bad parts. You know, it's just, I have no reason to be deceptive. I mean, I'm not biased. You know, I mean, we all have our favorites, but I'm not biased in the sense where I'm going to like show you bad benchmarks on purpose. Like, there's no incentive for me to do that, you know? So I'm just a regular guy. But see here, you can see it's still at 2.9 gigabytes, that VRAM. So yeah, I definitely have to test out that physics setting. So here I got 105 frames per second. Not bad, not bad. Back down to 61 by the train. 63, 68 over here. Still near the train, but up on top. We're ducking down somewhere, looking at my wife. She's at 105 frames per second. 56 frames on the part where we're turning the wheel. Now inside the train with the people, it's at 50 frames per second, which is actually not too bad. You know, that's actually pretty good. I don't know if you can see it, 50 frames per second here. And again, you know, the CPU is still running within spec. You know, again, these 93 degrees here are just briefly, they're not running that hot. You know, very long. So you don't have to worry about that. And you don't even have to worry about this 82 degrees. GTX 10 series cards can run up to 88 degrees. Or actually in the 90s, to be honest with you. You know, of course, you don't really want to get your cards up that high, but, you know, you definitely... but 82 is definitely not even a problem. Again, out here, when we're standing outside the train, 58 frames per second. 82 on the card. Again, the CPU's fine. And here's the part I was telling you about. When you go on the train and the people are just kind of either sitting or standing around, it kind of dumps down a little bit during these scenes. Again, there's a specific reason why it does that, the way the game was made. So I don't have the answer because I forgot. So here you can see, I didn't even talk about this. The video card here is running at 97%, 82 degrees, 1727 megahertz. So it's not even boosting. I mean, it's not even boosting. It's just running at like idle, basically idle speed. It's pretty funny. But it is working. You know, you got a lot of them CUDA cores working, so the temperature goes up. So I think that's the last one, I guess. But, you know, for the most part, I mean, it's running good, you know. What I did was I averaged all these screenshots together, and that's where I got the, let's go to the beginning here. That's where I got the 65 frames per second. So, I mean, I guess you can, if you want to drop it down a little bit, you can. But overall, you're going to get between a solid, steady, smooth, I'd say 50 to 65 frames per second average, you know. I don't see why you wouldn't, because the outdoors areas actually get better frame rates. You know, those particular few situations where you were outside, I don't think that they're common, you know, because some of those areas you go to are pretty open, you know, so you can probably get some good frame rates there. But overall, at high settings, I think this is very good. That's just my opinion. So, okay, so let's go on to the next game. So we did Far Cry. We did Metro. Let me just make a folder here. I mean, I probably won't forget. But let me just put that in there, that in there. So the next game that I was going to do was... let's do Rise of the Tomb Raider. That's always a pretty good one to do. Again, 1080p. Now I turned the anti-aliasing on FXAA. Now you probably could put it on SMAA or whatever it's called 1 times, but you know, again, this is a laptop, okay? And it has very good specs, and it even has very good air cooling, in my opinion, for being so cheap. They didn't really like skimp out on this laptop, you know. But you know, let's be realistic. FXAA, right? So that's fine enough for a laptop. And again, the pixels are very tiny on this, so you're not going to see the aliasing very easily on this. Yes, you will see it if you really just stand there and pay attention and focus on the screen. But when you're in the game, I don't think you're going to notice it very much. But the pixel density of this monitor is good. I don't know what it is because I don't know how to like measure it per se. But we're at 1080p here, FXAA. And surprisingly, I'm running this at very high settings. Okay? And I even have the ambient occlusion up to HBA 0+, or HBAO, whatever that is. That's the NVIDIA. And that one really does give you a performance hit. So everything's on very high here. Now I did put the specular reflection to normal. I turned off bloom and vignette and motion blur because I don't like them. But tessellations, screen space reflections on. Texture quality very high. Oh, this is the same one. Yeah, so this is the bottom here. Turned off film grain. I did put the pure hair on. Motion blur off, vignette, and all that's off. Dynamic foliage, I did put that on high. So, yeah, so everything's pretty much on very high. And even in some cases, I turned it up a little bit. I just turned off the bloom, you know, all that, this junk here. All right, so here we go. So the first scene here, as you can see, if I can, I can't really like extend this. Where she's standing in the beginning, 108 frames per second. Not bad. Oh, what happened? I only took one? Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Sorry. Again, and then as you rotate, the frames always drop. It doesn't matter what video card I use. It drops during that because you have a lot of snow or hairs going. The, you know, the fur is going, is really detailed. You know, the snow quality. So that went down there, went to 56 frames per second. CPU is doing fine. The video card is up to 77. In the cave, though, pretty good. 71 frames per second. Video card still holding at 77. Now the VRAM here, look at this, 5.6 gigabytes. Youch. And the memory RAM 8.2. So this is definitely using a lot of the hardware. And here the card is running at 1696 megahertz, so that's not very high at all. So you can see that it's not even utilizing the strength of the card to its max. So in the end, the FPS monitor was showing 64 frames per second average. And the benchmark result was 67.75 frames per second. That's a 1080p, very high. Excuse me, my coffee's wearing off. So that's pretty good. I mean, I'm happy with the scores, you know. I think this might have been a second run in the cave here, 70 frames per second. GPU, now this is the second run, so the GPU temperature went up by a degree. Now here the VRAM's only 4.9 and the system RAM is 8.6. So I'm not sure exactly what these games are doing here. Now I got the outdoor scene here. It went down a little bit out here with all this foliage and stuff. Video card's working at 99% here. VRAM went up a little bit. Look at the system RAM. Jumped up to 10, almost 10, 9.5 gigabytes of RAM rendering this scene. That's pretty amazing. CPU's working a little bit here. But, you know, again, nothing to worry about. The video card, the GPU is only running at 1696. You know, it's not even running at its idle speed. So here it is. I took another screenshot here. It's basically the same. It went up a little bit, 63 frames per second here. So CPU's still all right. These two cores are running at 100%. And look, they're only at 85 and 91. Not bad. So I just kept taking like the outdoor because this was like one that was dropping the frame rates. But you know, that was only like when it was probably loading in the scene. But here you have 73 frames per second out here. Video card still running at a good temperature, 78 degrees. CPU is still running fine. That really didn't change much. And this run, I got 73.67 frames per second. So that was better than the last run. that's because, you know, the hardware is probably working more, you know, more efficiently because it's, you know, the game has been running now for a while, so it's adjusting everything to you know, to render everything properly. So, you know, not bad. So it's getting better with time. Again, everything's still here running good. 72 average here, it says. So that's about right. So that's Rise of the Tomb Raider there. Pretty good. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, I'll try to get through this stuff quicker. Now, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, I ran everything on high with the HBAO plus 16 times anisotropic on the texture filtering. Tessellation on, screen space reflections on. I had these screen space contact shadows off for some reason. I don't know why. I'm not sure what I did here. Maybe I changed it. I don't know why. Why did I do here? I don't know what I did there. I think I was taking screenshots by accident. Anyway. Okay, so this is probably how I ran it. Because let me see. Yeah. Okay, so to be the last two. I apologize for that. So I'm running it at 1080p, Vsync off, anti-aliasing TAA, high settings with the ambient occlusion BTAO, level of detail high, tessellation on, screen space reflections on, screen space contact shadows on high, pure hair normal, lighting on, lens flare, screen effects on. So those other screenshots was probably me testing it. So this is the one that I finally agreed on to myself. So this is the settings you want to run it at on this laptop. High texture, high shadow, 16 times texture filtering, BTAO, level of detail high, tessellation on, you know, blah, blah, blah. So here's the benchmark running, you know, when it starts out. You got 52 frames per second. Over here you can see. Then it rotates around her, 54 frames per second. Then the jungle, 58 frames per second. As it travels through the jungle, it actually goes up to 60 frames per second. Out here, 93 frames. I don't even count this outside area. I don't even know why they put it in the benchmark, because it just kind of skews the whole thing. Like, you know, they should have just put another, like, I don't know, indoor cave or something rather than this outside. And then as you zoom down to the village, it's going to drop. And then as it travels through the village, 54, travels past Laura, 54, and then boom. So the average frames per second is 61. So good. Not bad for high detail, you know. And if you want to go on higher detail, you can, and just change some of the, you know, if you want to go on ultra and turn the shadows down more, you can. But I'm a firm believer in shadows. Like, if you have shadows on in a game, I think that makes the whole thing look 10 times better. In fact, when you put the shadows on, it kind of adds some more depth to it. You know, so I wouldn't turn shadows off at all. So that's why I kind of go with these settings, because this is still going to give you a great looking game, you know, without compromising too many frame rate, you know, frames per second. But down here, you can see, if I can zoom in on here, well, it doesn't really show. It says here GPU, the minimum was 46. And again, that was probably just loading into a screen, because every time it loads into a scene, the frame rates kind of drop. and the average is 64. So I don't know why it's different down here than it is up here. But you're definitely going to get around 60 frames per second, you know, give or take. I mean, you can see here too, the CPU to GPU, or the CPU to GPU is close. So there's no real bottlenecking going on here. I mean, I guess you could say slight, but they're running pretty close, you know? So there really isn't. So this is really a pretty good GPU for this processor in this laptop. There really isn't any bottlenecking going on. Yeah, so not bad. 61 frames per second with everything turned up to high. What more can you ask for on a gaming laptop? That's pretty darn good. For a $999 laptop. That's pretty good. All right, so let's go on to the next game. Shall we try The Division? Shall we try, I did Rise, right? Let's try Ghost Recon, because that's a pretty rough one. All right, so again, basically same scenarios, 1080p. Again, you can play like all these games really at 1440 on medium settings. You know, it's just gonna, you know, depends on what kind of frame rates you're gonna be satisfied with. You know, you're not gonna get like 60 frames per second probably at 1440. You'll have to turn it down to medium. And even games like, say, Metro or Ghost Recon Wildlands are going to be still rough on the card. So you can see just at the start screen here, I'm getting 60 frames per second. All right, so basically, yeah. So I'm at 1080p. And I actually ran this at high settings with TAA, and I even put on the HBA0 plus, which is the NVIDIA crevice shadowing. It's like when you have the shadowing in the cracks, it kind of makes it more natural, or, you know, more realistic, I guess, rendering. So everything's on high. I got the anisotropic filtering at 16. I'm gonna have to go soon. I didn't bother doing the bottom here because that was just like really unimportant stuff that's not really gonna affect it too much. This is pretty much all you had to look at. I turned everything up: terrain quality to high, shadow high, you know, texture high, level of detail high. The other stuff down the bottom really isn't going to change the frames too much, so I didn't take a screenshot. Here you can see the VRAM usage is expected to be 2655. So you got more than enough VRAM for your GTX 1060. Now here, loading in the scene, the video card has already went to 1,848 megahertz. So it's working. So this scene here, 53 frames per second. CPU's fine. The temperature's fine on the GPU. 3 gigs of VRAM. I mean, you can see it down here too. I mean, down the bottom here, 54 frames per second. So these are, you know, this one's a little different for some reason. I don't know why. It's not always exactly matching this. But, you know, they're within whatever, a proximity to each other. And then this is when you're flying away, 51 frames per second. and that coincides with this. So, you know, Ghost Recon Wildlands is a pretty rough game. I mean, it puts my RTX 2070 to work. So 51 frames per second. Here it reported a 53 average, which is pretty much in line with this. So, yeah, I mean, that's still pretty good, you know. That's not bad for high settings. Yeah. Ooh, excuse me. So the minimum was 42, max 63. You know, it's good. It's not bad. You know, I mean, that's great. You know, if you want to get over 60 all the time, then just change one of those settings. I like good quality. I like good graphical quality, so I'm keeping mine the way it is. That's the settings I would use, and I'd be totally happy with 54 frames per second, or even 50 frames per second in a game like this. So, yeah. So it's doing fine. I don't think there's anything to complain about so far. So I have to hurry up because I got to go pick up my daughter soon. I really wanted to get this done, and I wanted to even do more because I wanted to show you the new laptops, you know, that are out, and tell you which ones are probably good to buy, you know, based on this. So I think I have to go now, and I'll probably make a part 2 video. I really apologize, but I thank you for sticking around if you were here this long. So the next ones I'm going to do are World of Tanks, Division 2, Resident Evil 2, Path of Exile, and Grim Dawn. So I guess this is part 1 of the HP Omen Model 15 gaming laptop. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. I'll be back with part 2 later to finish out the benchmarks, and I'm going to also talk about some laptops that I've seen online that are the newer specs that are similar to this. So this way I can show you which ones that are probably good to check out. All right, so thanks for watching. Adios, au revoir, aloha, peace. Don't forget to like and subscribe too, just to give your support, you know. And if you wanted to support my channel, I don't really get anything coming in, really, not much. Check out the links on my page, and I'd be grateful. All right, thanks.